What is up, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals? Welcome back to Wordy Weirdo, where we focus all on words, whether that be the books that we love to read, write, or study. My name is Miss Kaylin Weir, your certified word nerd expert, and this week I am here to talk with you about a reader rant. We are going to be looking at the problem with sequels, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Ever read a book and just adore it, just find it to be the best thing you've ever touched and just gives you life and renewed energy, and you just go, I need to pick up the sequel, I'm so excited, and you go and you grab it and you finish it and you just want to cry because it's not nearly as good? Yeah, haven't we all? I've been there recently myself, which is what inspired this rant. So before we start today, I want to give the obligatory spoiler warning. I will try to stay away from spoiler tendencies, but however, sometimes I've got a loud mouth and I forget certain things are important. So I will tell you the two books I'm going to be focusing on most today, and then any kind of side mentions in case you're avoiding any such spoilers. The first book I'm going to be focusing on is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Maharan. The sequel to this is Blood and Honey. I will be focusing on both of these books pretty heavily, as well as The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, as well as its sequels, Catching Fire and Mockingjay. So if you're trying to avoid any spoilers for these stories, highly recommend you kind of skip this video for this week and maybe pick those books up first and then come back. I will also be briefly mentioning Divergent by Veronica Roth, as well as Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. Okay, spoiler warning aside, let's get into it. I'm going to start off by telling you about Serpent and Dove, because honestly, this is the book that started to make me realize the problem with sequels. And I think that giving you this little backstory and this little understanding of what's going on here before we dive into the actual problem will really help to cement the idea. Serpent and Dove is a fantastic book. First and foremost, I loved this story. I am a teacher. I have early work days, literally. Like, I usually have to be in the classroom by 7 a.m. Even with the virtual stuff, I was expected to be like at work, my computer, by 7:30. So my days start by like 7 a.m. at the latest, usually closer to 6 a.m. at the latest. But I finished this book in one night on a Thursday night when I had to work in the morning, because it was just that good. I couldn't put it down. And I finished that Thursday, went to the store on Saturday, so excited to get Blood and Honey. It was fantastic, and then I read Blood and Honey and everything fell apart. But let me tell you about what the story's about first. This book is about a witch and a witch hunter who are forced into holy matrimony. Wow, exciting, weird sounding, so let me tell you actual details now. Lou is our leading lady. She is a witch on the run from a very dangerous past that you're going to figure out if you read this book, or if you've already read, you know what I'm talking about. Reed, on the other hand, is a witch hunter who works for a church, and he is literally trying to exterminate all witches. And they accidentally sort of meet a couple times without knowing who the other person, well, Reed doesn't know who Lou is. Lou knows what Reed is. And a thing happens where basically Reed gets put in a pretty compromising position where it looks like he's not being the nicest person to Lou, and he gets accused of being a womanizer and abuser. And considering he works for the church, that's not a good thing. It's not going to work in his favor. So the Archbishop comes up with a brilliant idea. Force them to get married. And for Reed, he trusts the Archbishop. He goes, yep, that clearly is the only solution. And Luke goes, honor-bound witch hunter who doesn't want witches to exist, and witches are the ones hunting me. So Lou agrees. Now, if those details did not make it clear, let me spell this out for you. Lou is manipulative, she is secretive, and she really does not care what it takes to get what she needs and wants in life. Reed, on the other hand, is extremely closed-minded. He is so honor-bound that he forgets to ask what is right versus wrong, and he doesn't really remember that, other people have other beliefs. Now, it might seem strange that I'm telling you about all of these character flaws, but I promise it's going to come back in just a little bit. But I want to tell you about why I finished this book, loved it, and then hit the sequel and just wanted to cry because it was not nearly as good. At the end of this book, Lou has to tell Reed the truth. He has to learn the truth. And Reed has to learn some other things about himself and about the others around him that make the history a little bit foggier for him. Basically, Lou has to come clean, stop being so secretive and manipulative, and be honest for once, and Reed has to stop being stuck in his ways and thinking that he knows best. Which sounds great. They grew up, they changed, perfect. We can go into book 2 with so much more space for growth and excitement, and then Lou starts keeping secrets and Reed starts hating magic users, and it all falls apart again. And it was a good book, but I felt like I was reading the same book, you know? And that's when it dawned on me. The way to tell if the sequel is going to be a problem is when the characters grow too much in book 1. Now, the thing with that is it's like you want the characters to grow, right? But you don't want it to be so that they have to regress to tell any more stories about them. You know, if Lou would have gotten to the point where she would have stopped being so manipulative, but like she was still holding on to a lot of secrets, that would have been one thing. And if Reed would have accepted Lou but nobody else, that would have been another thing. And that's just not what happened. Or if something would have happened at the end of this book. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's shift gears. Because the thing is, I can list dozens of books on the shelves that these sequels just did not live up to it. But I can only list one that I confidently 100% can say I actually preferred a sequel to the original. And that would have been from the Hunger Games trilogy. Catching Fire is my favorite book of this trilogy. I'm gonna hope that most of you know what the Hunger Games is all about because it was a pop culture phenomenon for many years. But in case you didn't, the TLDR is Katniss has to volunteer for her sister to save her life from this horrible game called the Hunger Games where children have to murder each other. It's about as simple as I can put it. Katniss in this book is extremely distrustful. She does not care about other people because she thinks nobody can care about her. That's a lie. She cares a lot, but she thinks that other people can't care about her. And she really is hostile. Oh my goodness, this child. And the key scene that I always think about with the Hunger Games that shows all of these traits extremely well is the interviews that they have with Caesar Flickerman. Because essentially, Peeta goes up and professes his love for Katniss and says, yeah, it's kind of a problem. Not only is it unrequited, the girl's literally in an arena where one of us has to die for the other to live. It's a bad situation. And most girls, I should say, at that point in time would go, oh, this is a bad situation, or wow, he likes me? Or, you know, maybe, oh no, I also have feelings for him. Katniss goes, he must be mocking me, he's trying to make me look weak, and she attacks him and pushes him into a vase. It really shows her distrust, shows her hostility, and it shows her insecurity all at once. But we get to the end of that book, and the book ends, and she's starting to trust Peeta a little bit. She starts to see that maybe he could actually like her, and she starts to listen to Haymitch just a little bit. But she's not there. Like, she doesn't go home and hug her mom and say that she trusts her mom all of a sudden again. She doesn't just start trusting all of the people in town. She doesn't stop acting out and like being physically violent first. She doesn't start thinking everybody must secretly like have loved her all along. She basically goes, these two individuals, maybe three, are trustworthy enough. I should not attack them, and I should trust that they like me, okay? So when book 2 starts, and we get to see her trust Peeta just a little bit more, trust Haymitch just a little bit more, trust her mom just a little bit more as the story progresses, it makes sense. It doesn't feel like she's learning the same lesson over again. She's still learning that lesson. She's not having to go back and then restart. She's picking up where she left off. And you might say, but Mockingjay, she does regress. However, at the end of Catching Fire, we see Katniss all of a sudden get betrayed big time by Haymitch. Everything she thought she knew turns out to have been a lie. And that does a lot to a person's trust in others. She's now going to be hostile again because she's scared. She's going to be distrustful because she's been betrayed. And she's going to be insecure because what else doesn't she know? And that might all sound like, okay, that's really convoluted. Where are you getting all of this from? Where are you going with this whole problem with sequels versus the Hunger Games? It's simple. The Hunger Games sets it up so that Katniss has to keep learning her lesson. But she doesn't learn the same lesson over again. She's continuing the lesson. nobody's pretending at the end of the Hunger Games that Katniss suddenly trusts the world and she suddenly believes in herself and she suddenly is gonna be, thought first and then action. Catching Fire sets it up a little bit where she starts to have to learn to trust Finnick. She has to start to learn to trust Johanna. She has to start to trust her mother. But even when she does all of that, one of the first people she learned to trust betrays her, tells her lies the entire time, and then just sidesteps her everything she's ever had to learn. And so she has to learn to trust again in book 3. And she doesn't ever fully learn these lessons, but she starts to see the importance of it a little bit at a time. She learns to trust people based on actions, not on words. Actions that they decided and that they can clearly show her, as well as because they took a chance. If Serpent and Dove, at the end of this book, had shown something where Reed discovered a danger of magic, or Lou discovered a dangerous secret that if she told anybody would hurt them, genuinely, then yes, their growth in book 2 would make a lot more sense. However, it feels resolved at the end of book 1. So to move forward, you start to say, wow, but you already handled this. You already came to these conclusions. Why do we even talk about this though? I think for 2 reasons. Number 1, it shows you a lot before you pick up a book. Or a second book, I should say. If you finish reading something like Serpent and Dove and it feels like, wow, those characters, they nailed it, they figured it out, their lives are great, you're probably going to go into a sequel that's going to make the characters regress again. And if you read something like The Hunger Games, where the characters grow a little bit at a time, you're probably going to look at a pretty decent sequel. And for my writer friends out there, because, I'm here with you, I hope that it helps teach you just a little bit about the fact that if you're going to write a sequel, make sure you didn't make your characters grow too much in book 1 so you have to start them back over. You really don't want to do that. Your characters should never feel like they went back. They should never go backwards. I want to know from you guys though, what do you think? My guys, gals, and non-binary pals, do we agree with this theory? Do we have books that support or go against the theory? I want to hear from you down in the chat. Give me those comments. Tell me your favorite sequels, tell me your least favorite sequels, and tell me, do they support this theory? What do we think of it? I think this is a fascinating topic that we can really dive into together. But that's all I have for you this week. If you are interested in subscribing, we do talk an awful lot about words here on Wordy Weirdo. We are looking all at reader rants, writing workshops, and teaching tangents. If you want to follow me on other social media, I am indeed on Instagram. Over there, it will be at author Kaylin Weir, Kahlan, and Weir like weirdo.